Whenever I talk about cultures and civilizations, you may notice I have a tendency to group them all by language families. The Greeks and Romans were Indo-European, the Egyptians were Afro-Asiatic, the peoples of Northeast India are all over the place, you get the gist. But I realize not everyone might be so familiar with the different language families of the world. So, for those of you who actually have social lives, what exactly are the language families of the world? Just how many are there? And what does it even mean for languages to be related, or rather, not related? Of the world's more than 130 language families, wow, I'll probably have to tone down my ambitions with this one, the most widely spoken and arguably most recognizable would be the Indo-European languages. Stretching across Europe and Southwest Asia and including everything from English to Italian to Hindi, all divided into different subgroups like Germanic, Romance, Indo-Iranian, Balto-Slavic, Hellenic, Albanian, Armenian, and Celtic. In fact, it might actually be easier to highlight which European languages are not part of this massive family. Hungarian, Estonian, Sami, and Finnish are all part of a separate Uralic family, which includes a whole host of languages spoken across Fennoscandia and Russia. The Caucasus, meanwhile, is home to the Kartvelian, Caspian, and Pontic languages, all in one mountain range. Georgian is a Kartvelian language, by the way, if you were wondering. I'll explain what Basque is at the end of the video. Meanwhile, Turkish and Azeri are members of the Turkic language, spoken across Central Asia and all the way into eastern Siberia. At one point, one particular hypothesis stated that the Turkic, Tungusic, and Mongolic languages were all related under one Altaic superfamily, possibly even including the Koreanic, Japonic, and Ainu languages. Though, as I explained in another video about the Indo-European languages, this idea has been thoroughly debunked. Despite their long histories with Islam, Turkish and Persian are not related to each other, nor are they related to Arabic, which is an Afro-Asiatic language. The Afro-Asiatic family is divided into 6 different branches: Omatic, Cushitic, Berber, Chadic, Egyptian, and Semitic, the latter of which includes Arabic as well as Hebrew, Amharic, Aramaic, Akkadian, and Phoenician. Yeah, this is an old family. Despite its size, diversity, and being the continent humanity first evolved on, most of the languages of Africa can be broadly grouped into 5 different families, of which Afro-Asiatic is one. The Nilo-Saharan family, meanwhile, takes up much of Northeast Africa. It's not as well attested as many other families, but most likely includes groups like the Nubian languages, the Songhai languages, and the Dinka and Nuer languages of South Sudan. Further south, and the varied languages of West, Central, and East Africa are often grouped under the Niger-Congo languages, although this family is still somewhat hypothetical. But by far the largest subfamily of the Niger-Congo languages are the Bantu languages, including Congo, Lingala, Swahili, Zulu, and Xhosa. Yes, you heard that right. Those last 2 are 2 of the famous clicking languages of southern Africa, a feature likely borrowed from their neighboring Khoisan languages. The Khoisan family, however, is nowadays recognized as more of a group of languages rather than an actual genetic family, divided into 5 different smaller families. Malagasy is a member of the final family spoken in Africa, the Austronesian languages, spoken primarily over here, in Southeast Asia, containing everything from Indonesian to Tagalog to Hawaiian. Austronesian, however, is not meant to be confused with Austroasiatic, which includes Vietnamese and Khmer. Both these families are bordered by the Tai-Kadai languages, which naturally includes Thai, itself bordering the territory of the Sino-Tibetan languages, which aside the Chinese and Tibetan languages also includes Burmese. These and the Indo-European languages all dramatically mix in this area of northeastern India, known as Northeast India. Southern India, however, is the land of the Dravidian languages, like Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, but not Sri Lanka's Sinhala. That's Indo-European, like Hindi or Gujarati. Papua New Guinea is the most linguistically diverse country on the planet, and the island of New Guinea is home to several hundred different languages. And while many of them can be lumped into the Trans-New Guinea, Madang Abruyewat, or Torricelli families, the island itself is home to more than 50 different language families. Interestingly, despite having been inhabited for over 40,000 years, most of the languages of Australia can be organized into the Pama-Nyungan family, stretching across most of the island continent. Australia is kind of similar to New Guinea in that it is one family with a lot of languages and a lot of families with only 3 or 4 languages each. Skimming the Bering Strait, past the lands of the Chukotka-Kamchatkan and Yukagir languages, we reach the incredibly diverse Americas, starting in the land of the Escalute languages. Formerly known by a different name, the Escalute languages can also be called the Inuit Yupik Unangan languages. and include the languages of the North American Arctic, namely Yupik, Inupiaq, Inuktitut, and Greenlandic. Much of the North American interior is dominated by the Algic languages, with the Algonquian family including Cree, Blackfoot, Ojibwe, Mi'kmaq, Delaware, Powhatan, Potawatomi, Shawnee, and Arapaho. Interestingly, my own home region of the Pacific Northwest is actually an incredibly linguistically diverse place, with the Salishan, Wakashan, and Tsimshianic families all calling this region home, and those are just the families that still survive to this day. The Na-Dene languages, meanwhile, also make up much of the Canadian and Alaskan interior, but also Navajo down in Arizona and New Mexico. This is the same general part of the US where you begin to find languages like Shoshone, Paiute, Hopi, and a bit further east also Comanche, who are all members of the Uto-Aztecan family, which, as the name suggests, spreads down into Mexico with Oram, and the Aztec language, which is actually called Nahuatl. Nahuatl, however, is in a different family from the Mayan languages, like Quiche, Huastec, and Yucatec, the latter of which being what people might actually mean when they refer to the Maya language. Now, while still unimaginably horrible, the Spanish method of colonizing the Americas was a bit different to the British way, and involved a lot more intermixing with the native peoples of the continents, rather than outright expulsion, or worse. As a result, it's not uncommon for Latin American countries to have a decent percentage of their population speaking an indigenous language. I mean, it's usually a small percentage, like 6 or 8%, but sadly even that is way higher than it is in the US. But entering South America, past the Chibchan languages of Panama, we also see a lot of different families, of which the major ones I can condense into one paragraph are the Caribbean, the Arawakan like Taino, a possible Macro-Jay family, Tupian, like Guarani, which is spoken by a vast majority of the population in Paraguay, Jivaroan, the Araucanian languages of the Mapuche, who were the final holdouts against Spanish colonization, and the Quechua and Aymara languages of Peru. Finally, what do Basque, Ainu, Haida, and Sandawe have in common? That they share nothing in common. Like, with anyone. Over 100 languages don't belong to any language family, and are quite simply completely different from even their next-door neighbors, something known as a language isolate. This is different from unclassified languages, to be clear, in the sense that zero is different from unknown. But what does it even mean that these languages are all unrelated? Did people learn to speak at different times at different places? Well, we don't know, and it's impossible to know for sure, though some linguists have certainly tried. But when we say two languages are related, what we're really saying is, okay, these languages share some similar basic words, a similar grammatic structure, and wherever they are different, the differences sort of form a pattern. This is too much to be a coincidence, they must have had a common ancestor. And that's because languages always diverge over time. One thing I found from the University of Pennsylvania suggests that after 5,000 to 7,000 years, two given languages will be so different from one another that you might as well just start assuming coincidences.